Most people think heart attacks happen because their arteries slowly get clogged until one day it closes. That's not what happens. In fact, most heart attacks happen in arteries that most doctors would consider mildly clogged. Think about that for a second. The artery wasn't fully clogged. The person often felt completely fine. And then suddenly, a life-changing event. Which raises a very uncomfortable question. If heart attacks aren't caused by what most people think, then what actually causes them? And here's where the aspirin story gets weird. Because for decades, millions of Americans were told, take a baby aspirin every day. It'll protect your heart. Then almost overnight, doctors started telling millions of those same people to stop. So which is it? Was aspirin saving lives? Or were millions of people taking a pill they never needed? Well, here's the thing most people don't understand. The recommendation didn't change because aspirin stopped working. It changed because researchers discovered something far more important. Not everyone is fighting the same heart disease. Some people are at high risk, some people are at surprisingly low risk. And for one group, aspirin may help. But for another group, it may quietly create a completely different danger. Today, I'm going to show you what actually causes most heart attacks, why doctors change their mind about aspirin, who might still benefit from it, and if I discovered plaque in my own arteries tomorrow morning, exactly what I would start doing that exact day. Because once you understand what's really happening inside of your arteries, you'll realize this was never an aspirin story all along. It was a plaque story, and almost nobody's talking about the real villain. Let's go back to what actually happened because the timeline matters here. For years, the official guidance leaned toward, if you're over a certain age, consider taking a daily aspirin to prevent your first heart attack or stroke. Then in 2022, the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force, basically the panel that sets the national prevention guidelines, they updated their position. And here's what they actually said, because the headlines butchered it. For adults 60 and older who have never had a heart attack or stroke, they recommended against starting a daily aspirin to prevent the first one. For people in their 40s and 50s at higher risk, they said it becomes an individual decision between you and your doctor. Now watch how fast that got mangled. The headline became, doctors say stop taking aspirin, as if it applied to everyone. It did not. Most people think aspirin either helps everybody or helps nobody. But both of those are actually wrong. And the gap in between them is where most people get hurt in both directions. Here's the question everybody argues about online. Should people take aspirin, yes or no? That's the wrong question. That question has no answer, which is exactly why the argument never ends. The real question, the one that actually has an answer, is this. Why does aspirin help some people and quietly put others at risk? If you answer that, everything else in this lesson makes sense. So let's build it together piece by piece. To understand aspirin, you have to understand how a heart attack actually happens. And most people picture it completely wrong. The cartoon version is this. A pipe slowly gets gunked up over the years until one day it's totally clogged and then blood can't get through. Now, that happens sometimes, but it's not how most heart attacks happen. Here's a fact that's going to blow your mind. Studies going back decades found that roughly 70% of heart attacks happen in arteries that were less than 50% blocked. Yeah, that means the majority of heart attacks start in arteries that a stress test would have called just fine. So if it's not a slow clog, what is it? It's a rupture. Inside the artery wall, there's a soft, inflamed pocket of plaque, not the hard, waxy stuff you've been picturing. Think of it more of like an inflamed pimple buried in the wall. When that soft plaque ruptures, your body does what it's designed to do at the site of an injury. It forms a clot. And that clot, which is formed in seconds, not years, it's actually what blocks the artery and triggers the heart attack. So write this down. The villains here are not just high cholesterol or even high LDL. The villains are inflammation, unstable plaque, and the clot that forms when it ruptures. We've been misguided when it comes to heart disease and cholesterol. As a matter of fact, studies show that most people have heart attacks with normal to low cholesterol than with high cholesterol. Blaming cholesterol for heart disease is like blaming firefighters for fires. That's like saying, hey, every time there's a fire in my neighborhood, I notice there are firefighters at the scene of the crime. They must have caused the fire. That's kind of a stupid thought. Why are the firefighters there? To put out the fire. So why is the cholesterol there? To put out the fire. the inflammation. So finally, this is where something like aspirin walks onto the stage. I want to be fair to aspirin because it didn't get famous by accident or by marketing. Remember that clot we just spoke about? Aspirin works on the very first step of forming one. Your blood has these tiny little cells called platelets. When a plaque ruptures, platelets rush in and stick together to start the clot. Aspirin makes the platelets less sticky, so it blunts that first step. So in the exact moment a plaque ruptures, aspirin can be the difference between a clot that blocks the artery and one that doesn't. That's why if you ever think you're having a heart attack, the advice is still to call 911 and chew a full adult aspirin. That hasn't changed, and that still saves lives. And in people who've already had a heart attack or stroke, the evidence is pretty strong. Pooled trials covering hundreds of thousands of patients show that aspirin cuts the risk of a second event by around 19 to 20%. So aspirin works. Nobody seriously disputes that. But, and this is the whole point of this lesson, it's only half of the story. So if aspirin is that effective, why on earth would anyone tell people to stop? One word: bleeding. The same property that makes aspirin good at stopping a dangerous clot also makes it harder for your body to stop bleeding when you don't want it to. Mostly that shows up as bleeding in the stomach and gut, and more rarely and more seriously, bleeding in the brain. Now here's the concept that unlocks the whole debate. Two phrases: primary prevention and secondary prevention. Secondary prevention means you already have the disease. You've had a heart attack, a stroke, a stent put in, or you've got documented plaque. Your risk for a second event is high. Primary prevention means you've never had any of that. You're trying to prevent the first one. You're being proactive. And here's why that distinction is very important. If your risk of a heart attack is high, the benefit of aspirin is big enough to outweigh the bleeding risk. But if your risk is genuinely low, the benefit shrinks, while the bleeding risk stays exactly the same. So the problem was never that aspirin stopped working. The problem was that a lot of low-risk people were taking on all of the bleeding risk to get very little of the benefit. That's it. That's the entire reason the guidance changed. They didn't fire aspirin. They got pickier about who it's for. So the obvious question is this, like, which group are you in? Let's actually figure that out together right now. I'm going to ask you some questions. Just answer them in your head. Have you ever been told you have plaque in your arteries? Have you ever had a heart attack, a stroke, or a stent or bypass? Do you have diabetes or pre-diabetes? Has any doctor ever told you your fasting insulin or fasting glucose runs high? And here's the one that most people can't answer because they haven't done this test, but here's the question. Do you know your coronary calcium score? The last one matters more than anything else. And here's the proof. In the MESA study, thousands of real people followed for over years. Researchers looked at who actually benefits from aspirin based on their calcium score. People with a calcium score of 100 or higher were estimated to be 2 to 4 times more likely to prevent a heart attack than to suffer a major bleed. For them, aspirin tilts toward benefit. But with people with a calcium score of 0, they were 2 to 4 times more likely to have a major bleed than to prevent a heart attack. Same pill, same dose, opposite outcome. The only thing that changed was actually happening inside the person's arteries. So if you don't know what's happening in your arteries, you're just guessing. And this is not a thing to guess on. So let's name the thing that nobody said out loud during those headlines. The aspirin debate was never about aspirin. It was about risk. The higher your real cardiovascular risk, the more aspirin can do for you. The lower your risk, the more the side effects begin to matter. Because now you're paying a price for protection you may not even need right now. Aspirin didn't get better or worse. We just got smarter about matching the tool to the right person. So let me make this personal because this is something I actually think about. If I went in tomorrow and a scan showed plaque building in my arteries, here's the thing. My first question wouldn't be, which pill or statin do I take forever? No, my first question would be, why did this plaque form in the first place? Because here's what a blood thinner does and doesn't do. Aspirin may lower the odds that a clot turns a rupture into a catastrophe. That's real, and for the right person, that matters. But aspirin does absolutely nothing about the environment that built the plaque in the first place. It doesn't touch your blood sugar. It doesn't touch your insulin. It doesn't touch your inflammation. It just manages the consequence. It doesn't address the cause. And Einstein used to say, intellectuals solve problems, geniuses prevent them. So we want to focus on being a genius, getting to the cause. That's the part you actually have leverage over. So if it were me, here's exactly what I would put my energy into. 7 things. Number 1, get my blood sugar under control. Everyone obsesses over cholesterol and almost nobody talks about blood sugar. But high blood sugar damages the lining of your arteries and feeds the exact inflammation that builds unstable plaque. If your glucose is spiking throughout the entire day, that's daily injuries to your arteries. So I would want to get my hemoglobin A1C, which is the 3-month measure of my blood glucose, at 5.2% or below, and my fasting blood glucose between 70 and 90 milligrams per deciliter. I will do this by practicing low-carb keto, fasting, no food at least 3 hours before bed, and in general, keeping my total carbohydrates under 50 grams per day, with the focus of protein and high-quality fats. Step 2, which goes hand in hand with step 1, is to bring down insulin resistance. You see, high insulin isn't just a weight problem. Chronically elevated insulin levels drive inflammation and blood vessel dysfunction. You know, as a matter of fact, I've interviewed my good friend and colleague, Dr. 𝙁𝙁𝙁𝙁𝙁, on the Azadi show. He is a heart surgeon who has performed over 5,000 open heart surgeries. And he said there's only one cause of heart disease, damage to the blood vessels. We've spoken about that today. But I asked him, what's the number one thing that contributes to that? He said, high levels of insulin. So if you want to have sensitive levels of insulin, you got to get that fasting insulin between 2 and 6. And I would do everything possible to get there, starting with no snacking in between meals, focusing on high protein and high fat meals, lower carb meals, getting rid of liquid sugar, fruit juices, smoothies, excess fructose in general. That change alone changes the environment within your arteries. Step 3 is to lose the visceral fat. That's the fat that's packed around your vital organs. Yeah, belly fat, but it's deep abdominal belly fat. It's not just the stored energy sitting there quietly. It's metabolically active and it's releasing inflammatory chemicals around the clock. That belly fat behaves like an inflammatory organ, and your arteries are downstream of it. It's a nasty fat wrapped around your heart, your kidneys, your liver. Some of the best ways to lose that visceral fat is going to be high quality sleep, sprinting, building lean muscle mass, and everything I shared from step 1 and 2 with lowering glucose and insulin. Step 4 would be to get rid of all ultra processed foods. So you cannot build a healthy artery out of inflammatory building materials. I'd get rid of all industrial seed oils, canola, corn, cottonseed oil, sunflower, safflower, soybean oil, rice bran oil, grapeseed oil. And I'd swap those for healthy anti-inflammatory fats like butter, ghee, coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil, and extra virgin olive oil. These simple swaps here go a long way to lower inflammation in your body. Step 5 is that I will walk every single day. It's one of the simplest things that most people dismiss, and that is a mistake. Walking improves blood flow, helps your body release nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, which relaxes your blood vessels, and it also blunts blood sugar after meals. A 10 or 15-minute walk after your biggest meal of the day is one of the most underrated heart tools there is, and it is free. Step 6, protect your sleep. Some of the most important repair for your blood vessels happens during sleep. When you get poor sleep, it raises your blood pressure, raises your stress hormones, and raises inflammation. The whole list we're trying to lower. You can do everything right and still sabotage it with poor sleep each night. So to get better sleep, I will simply not eat at least 3 hours before bed. I will wear a sleep mask. I'm going to mouth tape, and I'm going to make sure my thermostat is at 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Step 7, eat an anti-inflammatory diet with whole foods. Look, every single meal is either supporting your arteries or working against them. There is no neutral. Polyphenol-rich plants, healthy fats, real whole foods. Whole foods are simply single ingredient foods. These foods feed your body the raw material it needs to calm inflammation instead of stoking that inflammation. Now go back and look at the 7 things we just covered. Not one of them improves your arteries by thinning your blood. Every single one of them improves your arteries by changing the environment that built the plaque in the first place. That's the whole difference right there. One strategy manages the risk, the other strategy removes the cause. Both can matter, but for some people, both belong in the plan. But almost everyone only hears about the first one, about just taking aspirin. And look, since we're talking about foods that support healthier arteries, I have to talk about one in particular. Because when researchers looked at the healthiest dietary patterns in the entire world, one food kept showing up again and again, and it was real extra virgin olive oil. In the PREDIMED trial, thousands of high-risk adults followed for years. They added extra virgin olive oil to the diet, and it was tied to a roughly 30% lower risk of major cardiovascular events. 30% from a food, not a drug. Now, the statin industry hates this study because the statin industry brought in billions of dollars last year, and their research and their medication doesn't even do what this study showed from an actual food. Extra virgin olive oil. Now, here's the problem. Most people think, yeah, I'm taking olive oil, Ben, I'm good. I'm getting all the benefits. But they're really not, because of a good percentage of the olive oil sitting at the grocery store, your Publix, your Whole Foods, your Costco, your Aldi's, your H-E-B, a lot of it is oxidized. It's stripped of the very compounds that make olive oil special in the first place. So if you're trying to get healthier, if you're trying to lower inflammation, if you're trying to support your arteries, you may not be getting what you think you're getting. And that's why I personally stopped guessing and I started using the Fresh Pressed Olive Oil Club. Not because it's trendy, not because it's fancy, but because I want olive oil that still contains the exact polyphenols that the researchers believe are responsible for many of the olive oil benefits. Look, the difference is simple. This one is early harvest, meaning higher polyphenol count. And I looked at their polyphenol reports, higher than anything I've seen. It's cold pressed, it's fresh, it's single origin, and it actually says right back on the bottle here when it's harvested. This one is from Spanish harvest, late 2025, early 2026. You want that harvest date to be within 18 months of consuming it. Now, unfortunately, most olive oil at the grocery store is not single origin. It's not in a dark glass bottle. It's not first harvest pressed. So how do you know if your olive oil is legit or not? I always tell my students, hey, do the olive oil taste test. Let's do it together right now. Go to your kitchen, grab your olive oil. I'm gonna do this right now. I'm gonna put it into a shot glass, so you could just grab a spoon. And what you wanna do is take a shot of it from a shot glass or a spoon. Then you wanna pay attention to what happens next. It should burn your throat. It should make you cough, make your tongue fuzzy. It should feel peppery like it does for me. If it doesn't do that, if your olive oil goes down completely smooth, if it doesn't have that slight peppery kick in the back of your throat, there's a good chance you're missing on the very compounds needed for these benefits. And if we're talking about supporting healthier arteries, reducing oxidative stress, and creating a healthier internal environment, these compounds matter. That's why I use the Fresh Pressed Olive Oil Club every single day. At least a tablespoon every single day, sometimes up to 4 tablespoons a day. I put it on vegetables and salads, on protein. Sometimes I even put it in my coffee. Sometimes while I'm fasted right now, I'll take a shot of it. It doesn't break your fast. It's one of the simplest upgrades I've made for my health. And for my community, they're giving away a 3rd bottle completely free when you order 2 bottles. Just click the first link in the description box below, or if you're watching on YouTube, grab your phone and scan the QR code on the screen to get yours right now. Now, these harvests are limited because they source them from small farms around the world. So availability changes throughout the year. And if you try it and you don't love it, you're protected by their money-back guarantee. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about olive oil. It's about giving your body better building material. Your arteries are built from what you repeatedly put inside your body. And if you're already making the effort to improve your blood sugar, lower inflammation, lose visceral fat, and to support your heart, don't let low-quality oils be the thing working against you. Click the first link in the description box below or scan the QR code on the screen to grab your Fresh Pressed Olive Oil deal before this harvest runs out. So let's close the loop we opened at the very beginning. Where does aspirin actually fit in? For the right person, someone with real plaque, real risk, a green light from their doctor, it may be a genuinely valuable tool. But for someone who's at low risk, no plaque, just taking it just in case, the bleeding risk may quietly outweigh any benefit. Which is why the real question was never, should everyone take aspirin? The real question is, what problem are we actually trying to solve? And for whom? And if you want to take these 7 steps you learned today to the next level and have a 45-day plan to really master this, I'm coming out with a new book called Keto Flex Revised. It's coming out July 21st. You could actually pre-order today and get some free bonuses to get started on your routine right away. In this book, it's customized for men versus women, women who have a menstrual cycle versus women who are postmenopausal, and it shows you the exact steps to lower inflammation, lower insulin, lose visceral fat, and feel like a freaking rock star. I encourage you to go to ketoflexbook.com or scan the QR code on the screen or click the second link in the description box below to pre-order the book today. When you pre-order the book today, you're going to get some exclusive bonuses sent to your email right away. The first is a KetoFlex Jumpstart Guide. The second is an exclusive PDF and audio series from the book. All you need to do is go to ketoflexbook.com. The book is going to be available on paperback, Kindle, Audible, and Spotify, and I narrated those audios myself. And I want to leave you with this because I think it's the most important part. You are not doomed because heart disease runs in your family. You are not doomed because someone told you you have plaque. And you are not doomed because you're taking medication every day. This was never about choosing between medication and lifestyle, like it's one or the other. It's about building an internal environment, your blood sugar, your insulin, your inflammation that supports healthier arteries in the long run. That's where the real prevention actually starts. So if this cleared up the aspirin confusion for you, do me a favor and send it to somebody you care about. Because right now, millions of people are making decisions off of headlines instead of the full story. And you could hand them the full story. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this lesson, I did a recent experiment that's going to blow your mind. I consumed 30 tablespoons of olive oil within 10 days, and I tracked what it did to my body. You're not going to believe what it did to my body. Here's a clip from that lesson. Then in a few seconds, click the video on the screen coming up here, and I'll see you in that next lesson. I'm going to walk you through every day, the good, the bad, the part where I almost ruined the whole experiment by making one really stupid mistake. And after watching this or listening to this, trust me, you're gonna wanna try this. Okay, so here's the thing about olive oil that most people get wrong. When you say olive oil to the average person, they think, oh yeah,